Meet the Sticker Goblin, the exciting new addition to Magic Online. Players have been experimenting with it in boring Kuldora decks or in unconventional solo decks like Cycle Storm. But today, I'm here to introduce you to a deck that can secure both the Monarch and Initiative as early as turn 2. The strategy involves early ramping with cards like Rite of Flame, Lotus Petal, and Desperate Ritual, allowing us to put multiple creatures on the board in the same turn. These creatures, like Burning-Tree Emissary and Sticker Goblin, also generate mana for us. From there, we can choose to play either Avenging Hunter or Crimson Fleet Commodore to start building our advantage from scratch. This deck is designed for speed and aggression, but can it hold its own against other decks? Let's find out. In our first match, we'll test the speed of this deck against other aggressive strategies, such as the Mono Black Sacrifice deck, which relies on cheap spells to take us down in a few turns. Our starting hand is incredible, potentially allowing us to secure a turn 2 Monarch or even a turn 3 Monarch with Initiative. The core idea behind this deck is to flood the board with as many creatures as possible in a single turn, applying immediate pressure and gaining an early advantage through two of Pauper's most powerful mechanics. With a bit of luck, we managed to execute our plan despite our opponent dealing some early damage and putting creatures on the board. Our main focus now is to grow our creatures and deal a significant amount of damage in a single swing. Our opponent decides to block with only one of their creatures, hoping to snatch both the Monarch and the Initiative. However, this leaves them with no blockers on the field. If we manage to regain the Initiative next turn and play Avenging Hunter, we'll make a double progress in our dungeon. Ultimately, our opponent chooses not to attack, leaving us at a very low life total. Nonetheless, this doesn't deter us because we can make them lose 5 lives, swing for lethal, and winning their first game. Ideally, I would have sideboarded some cards to counter aggressive decks, like Weather the Storm. Still, since it was one of the initial iterations of the deck, I decided to proceed with the second game with no sideboard. Although we didn't draw a land, we did find a Manamorphose, which enabled us to locate a Rite of Flame, because both Shamans and Sticker Goblin and provide us with a total of 5 mana. We searched for the land and added 2 counters to our Goblin after casting Kick in the Door to grant haste. We attacked for 5 and our opponent decided to concede after failing to find a land. Our second match illustrates how this deck can punish slower opponents like Mardu Synthesizer. In turn 2, I began casting my looting cards such as Manamorphose to delve deeper into my library. My goal was to finally play a Sticker Goblin and seize the initiative thanks to Trailblazer's Torch. Although our opponent eliminated our only creature, they didn't add anything to the board. This allowed us to untap safely and make progress in the dungeon. At this point, our only play was to put down an untapped land and pass the turn. During my opponent's turn, they play a Synthesizer and introduce a Core Sky Fisher to the board, potentially aiming to take the initiative. They left only 1 mana open, possibly for removal. I generated a token, and here's where you find a Corsal Idol becomes valuable. It not only acts as a pseudo ramp spell, but also lets us advance further in the dungeon. Eventually, I found a Sticker Goblin, which produced a significant amount of mana, so I used Reckless Impulse to explore my library, and was rewarded when it revealed a Burning-Tree Emissary and an Avenging Hunter. In one turn, I transformed from having no board presence to playing 4 creatures on the battlefield. My opponent used a cast down on my Avenging Hunter and removed the token to prevent excessive damage. They managed to steal the initiative this turn, but since they had already played a land, it wasn't particularly impactful. I played 2 more creatures, gained the Monarch, and launched an attack. After regaining the initiative, I decided to strengthen one of my creatures to maintain pressure for the next turn. They activated the Synthesizer in an attempt to find answers to my creatures, but their luck didn't favor them. I ultimately won the game. This isn't a match where I felt the need to sideboard, so I stuck with my initial plan. Furthermore, this hand was exceptional. Since 2 creatures are better than 1, I choose to start with Monarch. Pyre was swiftly eliminated, but the Goblin remained, allowing us to take a turn off and wait for more mana. Our opponent played a Lembas but failed to address my Goblin, so I proceeded to play a Shaman, cast Reckless Impulse, play a land, and pass the turn. Once again, my opponent didn't introduce anything significant to the board, and by chaining multiple Manamorphoses, Rite of Flames, and a couple of Sticker Goblins, and an Avenging Hunter, my opponent conceded before I could make further progress in the dungeon. In our third match, we faced off against a tempo deck, Izzet Faeries. Although this isn't the ideal start, I'm willing to give it a shot. A stroke of luck comes my way as I draw Rite of Flame, transforming this hand from good to great. Now I can play the Burning-Tree Emissary and initiate the shenanigans right away, all thanks to Trailblazer's Torch. Our opponent plays a Fairy, prompting me to use the initiative trigger for a Scribe. My goal is to secure another creature in the case the Shaman fails its turn. I come across an Emissary, choose to attack first and then cast it. Later, I use Curse Idol to advance in the dungeon and create a treasure token. During my opponent's turn, as expected, they seize the initiative and sneak in the ninja to gain some card advantage. However, they fail to introduce another creature to the board, and with only one red mana at their disposal, it's unlikely they can deal with both of my creatures. It is where I make a slight mistake. I cast my Sticker Goblin first and then attack, immediately taking the initiative. If I had attacked first, I could have stolen the initiative and progressed further into the dungeon, but we move forward nonetheless. They add 2 more bodies to the board, tap one of my blockers and attack with the ninja. Since I didn't want the fairies to grow next turn, I decided that training creatures is the optimal choice right now. After untapping, I drew an Avenging Hunter that provided me an additional land. This is incredibly helpful, as now I can hardcast my Oliphant to exert even more pressure on the board. They take 4 damage, and on their turn, despite sneaking in a second ninja and drawing a few more cards, they lack the mana and cards to survive, thus we move on the second game. This time I opt to side in a couple of Pyroblasts, anticipating the likelihood of encountering counter magic. This hand is decent, but being on the draw we need to be cautious if they leave mana open, so I prefer to take it slow rather than rushing this turn. I attempt to cast Restless Impulse to avoid discarding cards, but it meant a counterspell, so I decided to play a Lotus Petal and pass. They play another land, which means I can proceed without any concerns. I have a Pyroblast to protect my spells now, so I crack a land and cast an Emissary, prompting them to play 2 Spellstutter Sprites to counter it. However, I respond with a Desperate Ritual, countering one of the fairies, and this allows me to play 2 more Emissaries and equip a Trailblazer's Torch to gain the initiative. Nonetheless, this means they can now seize the initiative for themselves. Back on my turn, I attack, losing one of my creatures in the process. However, I manage to deal damage, boost one of my creatures with the initiative trigger and deal an extra 5 damage by using Cursed Idol. After a few back and forth attacks to reclaim the initiative, they successfully cast Tolarian Terror, once again stealing the initiative, which makes things a bit more challenging for me. I must now sacrifice another creature to regain the initiative. I attack, revealing an Avenging Hunter that fetches a land for me. With the help of Rite of Flame, I attempted to cast Trailblazer's Torch, but it met a counterspell. They create a token, but are now in a losing position, as the trample damage is enough to defeat them. I proceed to attack, and after blockers are declared, they lose the game.